Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to show you how I use this piece of 6x6 paper to create 4 cards. So this piece of paper is from the It's Gingie Time 6x6 paper pack from the Not Too Shabby shop. And so I will link below to all of these items because this one sold out within just a few hours of the release. I won't be using the ephemera pieces today, but I have used them in another video. But these sold out in just a few minutes of release, so Jamie is now offering them as a pre-order. And as you can see, Luffy is just as excited about these Gingie Time stamps and paper as I was. He was checking it all out, so he's going to sit over to the side while I show you how to create these cards. Now, to get started on my cards, you do not have to use this, but I'm going to use some metallic white texture paste from Ranger. This is new to me, but I absolutely love this metallic. I've used texture paste before, but not the metallic. But I love this metallic, so I thought it would be very pretty on the Christmas cards. But like I said, you do not have to use this. You could leave your background paper blank. So this is just going to be our background paper that goes along with our 6x6. Now you could leave yours blank white or a solid color that matches your 6x6 piece of paper. Or you could also emboss your paper instead. Or you could use texture paste or use this metallic paste. Now this metallic paste, I am just running it through a snowflake stencil and it looks so good with this paper that I'm using. So I am going to have to give this time to dry. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a few sheets of this metallic texture paste stenciled on. So what I've did is I've cut a piece of paper to 5.5 by what's the length of paper? Let's see, 5.5 by 8.5. So that way it would fit my stencil because this stencil wasn't wide enough to fit a whole piece of paper. So I am just going to do 2 pieces of paper that are cut 5.5 by 8.5. So in other words, you would just need one sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper to create the background. And so I'm just going to set this aside and let it dry on its own. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go wash my stencil, wash off my mat, and wash my little tool because this will dry on it and could mess it up. So it's water-based. You can just go wash it with soap and water and it will come clean. So while that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and start cutting my 6x6. So what I want to do is I want to cut my 6x6 in strips of 1.5 inch. So each strip is going to measure 1.5 inch wide. And so every 6x6 is a little different. So be sure to measure each piece. Even this last piece here, I'm going to measure it because my 6x6 may just be a little bit larger than 6x6. So I want to measure it and I'm just going to trim off, even though it's just a itty bitty piece that's going to trim off. So now I'm going to take each strip that I cut to 1.5 inches wide and I'm going to cut those into 1.5 inch squares. So I'm just going to keep cutting those off. You'll get 4 out of each strip. So when we get done cutting our paper, we'll have 16 squares. So each card is going to be different though. Each card is going to be unique. I'm not going to do the same sketch for each card. So hopefully you'll stick around to see how I use these because this was a lot of fun to challenge myself to see how many different cards I could make using these squares, but also how many unique cards I could create. And I had more ideas, but I just stopped at the 1 6x6 for now. I may have to come back and do a few more. So now you can see I am cutting some just craft cardstock, and I actually pulled this out of my scrap bin, and I'm just cutting it down to 1 3/4 inch squares. So that'd be 1 3/4 by 1 3/4. So what I'm doing is I want this to be darker like the gingerbread that I colored. So I just inked all of my squares. And you can see I didn't ink the center because I'm going to add my squares to the center of these, my decorative paper to the center. Now I do recommend that you watch the video all the way through before you craft along with me. Watch it all the way through, then come back and craft along with me if you want to follow along with what I'm doing. Because when you're gluing these squares on, you can see I'm gluing some with the gingerbread side, and then I'm gluing some with the green plaid. And that's because I already know what my cards, the sketches that I'm going to use or the ideas that I have for them. So that is why I am going ahead and gluing all of mine at one time. But you may want to watch all the way through so you know which side you want to use and where. So for my card base, I'm using a craft colored cardstock, and I've just inked around the edges to match the background paper. and I've cut a piece of black cardstock to 4 by 5 1/4, and then my white stencil paper is cut down to 3 3/4 by 5. And now I'm going to pull in one of my squares, and I'm just going to cut it in half from corner to corner so that it turns into a triangle. So I've decided with these 4 squares that I'm going to use 3 plaid and 1 of the gingerbread paper. So you'll have to decide with your paper which side you're going to use for each. You can mix it up and do however you want, but this is how I just wanted to do mine. So I started out with the first one, and what I did was I made sure that the top point and the left side point touched the edge of my paper, and then I put the bottom one on like that as well, with the bottom point and the left point touching the edge of my paper. And then I added the center one. So I'm just trying to make sure everything lines up, that the edges line up from, when I add the center one in. And then I'm going to come back and add the triangle pieces to the top and bottom. So you can see here, I'm just going to make sure that the edges line up with that square. So I'm just going to leave some of this triangle hanging off the edge of my white paper. And hopefully this all makes sense. I think by showing you too, if you need to pause and back up and slow down the video, then you can do that to understand. But these are really simple cards that I'm putting together today. So I think you could use a variety of measurements and still make these work. You could have smaller squares. If you did the smaller squares, you have more space showing your background paper. So once those edges are glued down, I'm just going to trim them off to line up with my white paper. And so that way everything is just lined up nicely. And I prefer doing that versus cutting it ahead of time. So I had a little extra hanging over. That makes it just fine. Just trim it off. And then I'm going to add that white stencil paper to my black cardstock. And then I'll add that to my craft card base. Now, I did not decorate the inside of these, but I'm really thinking about going back and decorating the inside of these cards. But today I'm just doing the card fronts. So now I'm going to use this image that I stamped and colored in. And I stamped it and colored it in with alcohol markers. And so now I'm just going to add that to the center of my card there. I thought that was really cute. I'm keeping these really simple. I'm not going to add a sentiment right now. I can't decide if I want one of these or just put the sentiment on the inside. So for my second card, once again, I'm going to do this for all my cards. I'm using a craft colored card base that I've inked around the edges. And then I've cut a piece of black cardstock to 4 by 5 1/4. And then I've cut the white stencil paper to 3 3/4 by 5. So now this one is really simple as well. So I have chose 4 more squares. And for these, I've chose to use 2 with the front of the paper with the gingerbread, and then 2 with the back side, the plaid paper, the green plaid. So now I just want to arrange these in a square on the front of my card, but I've decided I want to have these more towards the top of my paper or towards the top of my card versus centering it. So that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm just going to glue those down. And then once I have them glued down, I'm just going to press them really good. Now you'll see that I am using my scoring tool here or my pressing tool to press these down. Because of that texture of the snowflakes behind, I do have a little issue with, getting it to just grip and hold down. So I just take a few minutes with each one or a few seconds with each one, and I just press them down really good. And then I'm going to add another one of those stamped images to the center of this card. And once again, I'm going to hold off. I think a sentiment would look good on the bottom of this one, but I'm going to hold off and wait and decide later on. But for now, I'm just going to leave them like this. So once again, I'm layering it onto the black cardstock and then onto my craft card base. Now I inked my craft card base as well as the background paper. You don't have to do that as well. I think the craft color would have looked just as good with this paper. And so, do what you like to do. I'm just sharing some ideas on cards that you create using one 6x6 piece of paper, but you definitely could change this up quite a bit. So now for card number 3. Well, this is card number 2 finished. So now let's move on to card number 3. Once again, all the measurements are the same for the card base, the black cardstock, and then as well as the stenciled paper. So now I'm bringing in a piece of brown cardstock, this craft cardstock again, that I've inked, and that one measures 1 5/8 by 5. And so this is going to be a landscape card. So I'm just going to put that piece of brown paper on the center of my white stenciled paper. And once again, I have to press it down with my Teflon bone folder so that I can be sure that it grabs a hold of that stenciled and textured paper. And then for this one, I'm only going to need 3 of the squares. So we do have 1 square left over in the end, but once we finish all the cards, but you could use those as decoration on the inside. We could use that one, cut it up as little strips and put it on the inside of your card, or maybe we just save that for something else. So for this one, we're going to add 1 square on each end. So I like to glue those down first. And what I'm trying to do is to make sure that there's the same amount of that background paper around the top, left, and bottom edge. And then I'm going to do that on this other side, just making sure that the top, right side edge, and bottom edge, I'll have about the same amount of that background paper. I'm not measuring, nothing exact, just trying to eyeball it and make sure that is about the same amount. Then I'm going to use the back side of this paper, and I'm going to turn this square like a diamond shape again, and I'm just going to center it up between the 2 other squares, and it does overlap just a little bit at that corner, on the corner on each side, but I like how that looks. And so then I'm going to just add my stamped image again. This is another one of the images from the stamp set, and like I said, I will link below to this. Hopefully it's still available. The last I looked this week, it is still available for pre-order, but there is a limited number that she's going to offer of these. So be sure to check it out. If you're watching this video later in the season, it may not be available, but I will link below just in case. But there's always something cute at the Not Too Shabby shop that would work perfect for these cards. Okay, so here is our finished card. I really love how that, look at that metallic, how it looks so pretty on this white paper. So for this last card, the measurements are going to change just a little bit and be a little different. So I have the craft card base, the A2 size card base. I have cut my black paper, but stick around because that's going to change. And my stencil paper measures 4 3/4 by 3 3/4. And that's just what I had left of my paper, so that's what I used. So then I'm going to bring in 3 more squares, and this time I'm going to just line them up without any background paper onto my stenciled paper, and I'm just going to line them up going down the edge of the paper here. I've left a little gap on the left hand side. You can kind of get an idea where you want it. You can be closer to the edge. I didn't think it would look good centered, so I wanted to stay towards the left side more. And then I'm just going to put these squares on there, and I'm going to leave some hanging off. So at the top there, I kind of wanted it even, but I decided not to do that because it would cut the gingerbread's head off. So what I've decided to do is I've just decided to layer that one on so that his head doesn't get cut off, and then so the bottom one will probably have just a little bit less paper at the bottom, but that's how I lined them up. And then I'm just going to cut off the excess paper off of them. And then I am going to add this little gingerbread that I stamped and colored in with alcohol markers. And so all I did was just fussy cut all of these out with scissors. I just try to cut around the edge and leave just a little bit of white edge when I fussy cut, but all of these were just hand cut by me. I'm just going to go ahead and layer these up again like I did before, but I had a little mistake. So I'm going to show you how to fix your mistake if you make the mistake as well. So when I layer this up, I'm just going to layer this piece onto the black piece of paper. But my crafting days do not always go as planned. So this day was going pretty good until I glued this one on, but I don't know what I was thinking. I was trying to get everything lined up, and when I go to press it down, you'll see in a moment, somehow it gets really crooked. And so I try to pull it off, and I'm like, okay, it's really crooked. Should I just pull it off? But I realize it's going to destroy everything. So here's a trick I do when that happens. And I've done this before, but it always takes me trying to pull it off to finally realize, oh, okay, I just need to do this instead. So what I do is I just go around, I trim all the excess off, and then I added it again to another piece of black paper. And that way, you know, the paper is a little smaller. So that's why I said the sizes are different at the beginning. So for this one, for the black paper, I did just have to cut it smaller to fit. So for this one, it ended up measuring 5 by 4 or 4 by 5 for the background paper, for the black paper. Well, here are my completed cards. I hope that you have enjoyed seeing me create these. Hopefully I didn't go too fast. If I did, like I said, just rewind, slow down, and pause. You can actually slow down the videos if you wanted to as well, but it will make my voice sound really weird. But here are all 4 completed cards. I have really enjoyed creating these. I hope that you've enjoyed seeing me create these, and I would love to hear from you in the comments which one is your favorite, which design is your favorite. You could always just cut these squares and create one of these designs. You wouldn't have to create all of them, but I wanted 4 different unique cards using one 6x6 piece of paper. Well, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.